Hey guys, it's Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms here in the mountains, North Carolina. And tonight I was ready to do another CB radio video. And this covers probably the last type of CB radio you can buy and the one that you think about the least. Now, as far as I know, these aren't made anymore. They probably haven't been made since, I'd say, 2001 at the latest. But it is the emergency style CB radio. These were commonly found in the trunks of cars all the way from the late 70s through the late 90s. If you didn't own a cell phone, which nobody did in the 70s and very few people did in the 80s, and you didn't want to have a CB radio permanently mounted in your car, you weren't into the hobby or you just didn't like the looks aesthetically of it, it was not uncommon at all, especially for female drivers, to have one of these in their trunk. So if you did break down or had an accident or whatnot and needed to get in touch with someone, you could take this out of the box, and I'll show you what they look like out in a second. You take it out of the box, throw an antenna on the roof, and you're ready to communicate. So it's actually a pretty neat idea, and for its time, it was quite popular. You'll find these a lot of times for free. Sometimes somebody thinks they have something unique and they sell them for very expensive amounts of money, but a lot of times they're free, $5 or $10, and I really wouldn't recommend maybe spending much more than that. Anyway, though, they are cool. What you got with that kit was something like this. Now, this is probably a mid to late 80s model, although I don't have the serial number. Date code 3804. Maybe all the way up to 2004, I suppose it's possible. Anyway, this is basically what you get. If you have one that's an early 80s or a low-end model, it'll have a manual crank dial for the 40 channels or possibly even 23, depending. But if it's a more modern one, something made, say, after 81 or 82, chances are it'll have a digital readout. And depending on the make and model, there's actually some that have quite a few nice features. We'll go with this one here, because this is the one I picked up for $5 the other day. So it has all the functions of what would be, a mobile radio, like a handheld. So you have your on-off button, automatically goes to channel 9 for the emergency. It also has a channel 9 emergency button to automatically take you to channel 9 because, again, most of these are going to be used for emergencies. Other uses people were using these for back in the 80s was for if you were driving with another family or if you were doing a convoy type situation. You could communicate back and forth between the cars as far as getting off to get gas or whatnot, which was, seems silly now, but before cell phones, these are the things we did. Anyway, this one also has a channel up-down button. We'll move it up to channel 19 or 20 here. And then this one has some pretty neat features that I haven't seen in too many of these. It actually has a transmit bar graph, transmit and receive signal ratio. That's not something you find too often on these emergency radios, but it's a cool function on this one. Then you've got your squelch and your volume. And down here you have a speaker. Up here you have a small microphone. So a lot like your handheld radios, and I suspect a lot of these probably had the same guts as a handheld radio would have had, but no antenna. Instead, on the bottom or sometimes on the side, you have plugs, 2 plugs that come with it. You're going to have a cord here. This is a 12-volt cigarette lighter cord, and again, remember in the 70s and 80s, every car had a cigarette lighter. Not a 12-volt outlet, a cigarette lighter. Anyway, and the other cord would be usually like this one, RCA phono jack type, but that's your for your mobile antenna. And then I'll put this down for a second. That went off to this. You got your magnet mount antenna, and so as you can see, this one folds down. It's very compact, but when you need to use it, has a magnet base and it extends out. This one, not very far. I have seen ones that go out 5 feet, but this one looks like maybe a 3-foot model. And the magnet mount on this is not strong enough to hold these antennas above a certain speed. Usually in the owner's manual with the radios, they would tell you, don't drive above 50 or whatnot with them. So that's the whole style, but what could you use one of these things for today? There's still not a bad idea to have one of these and throw them in the trunk of your wife's car, or your car, or anybody's car, especially if you don't want to set up a CB radio full time. Like I said, they can be found extremely cheap, and they're mostly full functioned. Other uses, and it's interesting, I'll show you a picture here of a Radio Shack, one that I had, and this was actually the second CB radio I ever owned. I had it all the way up until about 2 years ago. But this Radio Shack model had on the back side of it screw eyelets, so you could put 2 screws in the wall and hang this thing up and use it as a base station. And that's exactly what I did. It had a very low amperage requirement, so you could use just a regular wall wart type plug, and I spliced one of those that was probably for, who knows what, maybe a cordless phone or something like that, and cut the ends off, put a regular Canon plug on it, had that plugged in, and then I ran an antenna up onto the roof of our house and just, again, spliced it to an RCA phono jack. Now, it didn't have a place for an external mic. It didn't have, some of the fancier features, but I got it for $5 even back then. So this was got to be, 87, 88, something like that. So really neat use for them if you can pick one of these up or you come across one. They're full powered. They're 40 channel usually. They sometimes have nicer features, a separate mic and a microphone. Not a bad little use for them. So that's it. It's an interesting video, kind of a history lesson, and I don't know, a heads up. Some people might even really not know what this is, walk right past it, and just think it was, who knows, hair curlers in here or something like that. But the reality is, it's full radio. Everything you just saw me take out, the cords, the power line, the antenna, and the main unit, all fit in this very, very small box. It doesn't take up much room. Now, some of the older ones were slightly larger, but pretty cool. Like I said, I've had one from before I had a driver's license, or right around when I was getting my driver's license, all the way up through about 2 or 3 years ago, when the reason we got rid of it at that point was all the cars had a radio permanently installed in them. But it's a great thing to pick up. You could give it to friends. They could throw it back in their trunk. Who knows, Cell service goes down due to a large natural event or something like that. Not be a bad thing to have in your trunk, or maybe your wife's trunk. That's it. I am Eric, owner of Farpoint Farms. Wanted to share this little tidbit of information with you and hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe you'll think about liking and subscribing. And I'll see you next time, because I picked up some other cool CB related stuff not too long ago. We'll get into that. Take care.